Hello and welcome to my channel. Thanks for stopping by today. A few weeks ago, Hanna Karlzon posted a truly heartbreaking health issue on her Instagram account. Many colorists on Instagram and YouTube started some tags to show Hanna love and support during this difficult time. I thought that was a very touching thing to do, and since I didn't have a Hanna Karlzon book, yes, I know that's crazy, I watched a bunch of flip-throughs of all her books and decided Tales from the Forest Kingdom would be a great start to her books. So for all of February, I will be coloring in this book. I've had it a few weeks now, and I've already colored in some pages, which I'll show you at the end of the month. But guys, I really love this book. The size is like the perfect size. The paper is good quality, and of course the illustrations are so fun. I've literally been coloring every day since I got this book. It's a hardcover book, which I only have two other hardcover books. One of them, again, first one for me, Maria Trolley book. Mandolin is also a hardcover. And they just have a special feel to them, which in my head translates to don't mess this up, which is silly, I know, but I do really want each page to feel special. All right, so I will show you my first page I did, which is the nameplate page. And I really love the look of this kind of black chalk look inside the wood frame. It reminds me of a chalkboard. I wanted these beads to look like pearls, so I did a little color shading inside each bead, and then I added some diamond glaze to these and then to the little gems in the crown, which that simple little touch just made it look and feel extra special. I know you can't feel it, but it does have like this embossed look, and then it just gives that perfect little glisten and shine to those beads. Anyway, so I've decided to use this diamond glaze. This will be that little extra special addition to each page. Okay, so the page I picked for this video is going to be this one. It already feels very whimsical with the kids writing on the bears. I love this long ribbon coming off the bear and these tall pointy hats on the kids. But I visualize them more in the forest. So my thought is maybe some trees in the background with some low misty clouds, maybe a moon peeking through the trees, and some fireflies floating around them. Now, visualizing is one thing. The challenge is to get my idea on the page. I am all for using simple techniques, so although there will be many steps and layers to this one, it will be easy and fun to see how this background comes to life. Okay, let's get started. All right, let me talk about the supplies that I'll be using for the forest background. One is the pan pastels. Okay, I'll be using a turquoise. This is turquoise shade. This is neutral gray extra dark. And this one is chromium oxide green shade. Okay, now you could use other types of chalk pastels. They don't have to be pan pastels. Pan pastels just give you a better color payout with less work. You could also just get away with using one of these shades too. So I'm just gonna make some things a little bit darker in the foreground, and then have the background really light. But again, you can still create that kind of look. You just won't have the color variation with the three colors. All right, next important thing would be your stencil. So I went on the internet and just searched tree silhouettes, and I wanted one that had a pretty good sized trunk and very simple branches. You could find something that you could easily cut out, or you can draw your own, cut it out. I did it on the Cricut because I was looking for different sizes. I wasn't sure which size I wanted yet, so I just cut out a bunch of different sizes. But what you're really looking for is the negative cutout of the shape, okay? But always hold on to this because you never know when you might need this type of stencil also. Okay, so there's that. Let's see. Also, you will need a workable fixative, especially with working with chalk pastels, and a white Posca. This one is a fairly big size tip on it. I'm going to be using this for the mist on the clouds, and just in case we need to wipe some of that, I have some baby wipes or a tissue nearby. I also have a circle sticker, and I kind of just, dabbed it on some fabric to begin with. That way it takes off a lot of the stickiness. I think I'm going to have a moon in the background, so I'm just going to place this sticker with, not as much tack as it started with onto the page, and that way I can have more of a white moon in the background. But it's always handy to have an electric eraser nearby to erase a lot of the chalk, which we will have to erase quite a bit on the inside. A lot of the times I will do the color pencil work first because that kind of repels some of the chalk, and then you can just take a kneadable eraser and get some of that chalk off. But I thought today I would just go ahead and do the background first. All right, and then you're going to need some scratch paper, and this is just to get off some of the excess pastel off your brush. Oh, let's talk about brushes. All right, so this is a makeup type of brush. It's very dense, super soft, and they come in a lot of different sizes, okay? I just picked kind of a small to medium size, but I'll be using this type of brush to apply for the stencil, okay? Soft pastels, or sorry, pan pastels, you really need to have this type of tool also. This is a soft tool and then a sponge applicator. This one's a more pointy tip, and then they have ones that a little bit more rounded and flat. So I'll just be using these. This will be more for when I do the ground, not the stencil part, okay? Oh, and wax paper. I'm going to be putting wax paper behind my page just to help protect around the surface. Okay, so let me clear this off and we'll get started. For the first layer, I'm going to make a ground line that's about mid-leg of the mama bear. For the stenciling part, I'm starting off with this turquoise shade using the oval makeup brush. Let me add a round sticker at the top. I want this area to stay as white as possible through the trees. To load my brush, I just rub gently on the pan pastel, and then I want to try to get off as much pigment as possible, so that's why I rub it on the scrap paper first. And then I'm just going to gently rub it on the paper. You can see that there's still quite a bit of pigment on that brush. So I'm trying to jump over some of the areas, but I know I'll eventually have to erase if I get any on the illustration. All right, so I'm going to pick it up, and as you can see, there is quite a bit of pigment. So without even reloading my brush, I'm going to do the same thing, just move the stencil around. For this first layer, I'm trying to keep the top of the trees below the top of the page. And each time you do the stencil, it's going to get lighter and lighter. So the lighter trees are going to look farther back and the darker trees will look closer up. All right, and I did get some on this leg here, so I'm just going to use the electric eraser and erase that off. Okay, I'm going to work on this other side now. So same concept, I'm going to reload my brush now. Again, trying to get most of that pigment off. And just applying in a very gentle and kind of circular motion. Okay, I'm going to speed this up. I think you get the idea of creating these staggered trees in different lightness. It might be hard to tell, but some of these first trees I did have quite a bit of dust around the edges, so I'm going to use the brush to help soften the edges. I'm fine with the pigment coloring the sky. I actually prefer to have the sky take on a little bit of this shade. I'm taking the sticker off because for the next layer I will put some trees on top of the moon. Okay, let me move this out of the way. And before I spray it down with the fixative, I am going to erase as much as I can before I do the next layer. Okay, time to spray it down, so I'm going to use the Karlzon Workable Fixative. So let me spray that and let it dry, and I'll be back. I completely thought this was a white Posca, but it's a Sharpie chalk marker. So, well, let's see how this does. All right, I picked this one out of my collection because I liked the bigger tip that it had. The other Posca that I have has a thinner tip, so I wanted a little bit thicker lines for these misty areas. And then I thought I would have better control with using one of these paint pens to be able to go either in front of trees or even kind of jump behind. So far, what's nice about the chalk marker is that it is very faint, which is good for kind of more of a distance looking mist. But we'll see what it looks like when it dries. My next layer, I want the illusion of the trees to look closer. So adding a bit of this dark gray in with the turquoise will get them just that little bit of darkness that I need. So loading up with the turquoise first, and then just a little dab of the gray. And again, I'm trying to get off quite a bit of the pigment. It's still going to be pretty dark. I can always layer more on top. Okay, and I'm putting the stencil up higher on the page. Some of these trees I'll even have the top of the trees coming off, again, making them look bigger and closer to us. I'm also going to reload the brush each time. I'm still taking off quite a bit of the pigment, but I don't want it to be too faint. All right, and then the closest trees, again, these are going to be coming off the page a little bit, and now I'm going to introduce some of the green. And I have a lot of dust here on my scrap paper, so I'm just kind of picking some of that up. Sometimes it looks too light, so I just go back over it, make it dark. So again, the darkest ones are going to look the closest to you. All right, and same as before, I'm going to take the brown brush and just soften the edges of where that pigment kind of collects. All right, and then erasing as much as I can, and then I'm going to dust off all that eraser dust. All right, this time I'm actually going to get my Posca, and I'm just going to highlight a little bit more of this since this is a closer up mist. For the ground, I'm using the same colors as the trees, but this time I'm using the soft tool applicator and sponge, which moves the color around a lot better and keeps more of the pigment intact. This sponge happens to be very dirty with some darker shades, so I just wanted to switch that out real quick. And I'm going to start off with the turquoise shade, and then I'm going to add some of the green. And then I'm going to use some of that darker gray and just start up at the very top of that ground line and work my way down. Okay, I'm gonna erase a little bit more, and then I'm also gonna erase a little halo around these circles here, and then some also in the distance in our forest. And this will eventually become our fireflies. All right, now I'm gonna spray again and let that dry. All right, so here it is all cleaned up. I actually ended up adding one more darker tree. I felt like it needed one more right there. So let's talk about the rest of it. So the illustration part of it will be used with mostly Prisma Color pencils. I will be using some markers for a base on the bears. And let me show you the colors. All right, so here are the colors. So the hair is going to be more in these orange tones. The kids' clothes are all going to be in green shades here. This is going to be the ribbon, and these are just some accent colors, maybe for the little patches or something. The bear's nose is going to be the shade, and then the bear I want to look like a black bear, so he's going to be in grays, and then some black marker to create the fur texture. And I think that's it for now. I'll come back for when I talk about the fireflies. All right, I'm using the shade 1033. This is a Prisma color. Most of the colors I'll be using are Prisma colors. And this is going to be my medium shade for the colors of the hair. And I'm just filling in all these strands just really lightly, just adding a little bit of a base coat. All right, now I'm taking a 1032. This is going to be one of my darker shades. I actually have another one that will all go through at the end of this. But yeah, so I'm basically going through and finding all the shadow areas. I'm kind of doing a flicking motion, but I'm also just kind of coloring too. Hard to medium pressure in some of these areas, but then I lighten the pressure as I get more to the lighter areas. So start kind of heavy and then go light. That way it'll be easier to blend. Now, I do have to tell you, I think it's from the Workable Fixative. The colors just feel very different laying down on the paper. And I've colored in this book before with Prisma colors. But yeah, something just feels very different, and I'm assuming it is from the Fixative. All right, going back with the 1033, now I go over the darker area and then I start to blend that in with this medium shade. So I can carry this medium shade in a little bit more to those lighter areas, the highlight areas. But yeah, so I press hard, kind of burnish that darker color and then lighten the pressure a little bit more as it gets to that lighter area. All right, now for the third color, the highlight color, I'm using 940 and just going over, kind of burnishing over all of these areas. And that way it adds that little bit of goldenness to the other colors, but then it's brighter where we left it lighter. Okay, I think the shading is pretty, but I want it to have a little bit more depth in there. So I'm going to use a darker shade, and this is going to be 945. And I'm just going to get into those shadow areas and deepen it up just a little bit more. All right, just going to burnish a little bit more with this highlight color. And that's basically how I'm going to do the hair for the other kids. Now, they have not as much hair as this first one, so it won't take as long. Using the shade 928, I'm going to give them a little bit of some rosy cheeks and tops of the ear. And the skin color is 997. All right, and then I'm going to use 1080 for the shading. The coloring technique I'll be using for the kids' clothes will all be the same. They will be in shades of greens with a light, a medium, and a dark shade of each. I start out with a medium shade and do a light base layer of that color throughout, but staying away from where I want those highlights. Then I move to the darkest shade and concentrate on where the shadows will be. Heavier pressure against the line and then lighten the pressure as you pull away from that line. Back to the medium shade where I burnish over the dark and bring more of that medium shade to the middle. All right, now using the lightest shade of the green, I am going over pretty much burnishing and blending that whole color over the entire surface. I am adding one Black Widow pencil from the Monarch series. This is 108. All right, for the shoes, I'll be using 1080, 945, and 1013. All right, these are the colors I'll be using for the patches. With the addition of the light blue 1086 and a darker kind of gray blue 1088. This flowy ribbon on the bear and some of these other accents I will do in kind of a raspberry shade. The colors are going to be 1029, 1013, and 995. Okay, for the bears, I am going to be using a combination of some water-based markers, similar to like a Tombow, and some color pencils. So first I'm going to take my black marker and I'm just going to fill in the eye. I'm actually going to give it a little bit more of a black area, and I'm also going to give the bear a black nose. All right, since the bears are kind of a big area, I'm actually going to use my water-based gray marker and pretty much cover the whole bear using short little strokes. I'm also going to be careful not to get around those little circles. So and around the top edge of both bears, I want there to be a bit of a highlight there, so I'm going to work around those areas. But I'm kind of messily coloring this in. It doesn't need to be a solid color because I want some of the white to kind of peer through. And before I accidentally color in this area, I'm going to color it brown with the color pencil because this part I want brown. Okay, now going in with my medium and dark shades of gray, now I can kind of highlight or darken some areas that I need to, and just kind of help form where I want shadows and yeah, placement of little fur marks. Okay, now going in with that black marker, and now I am doing little flicks and fur texture around. All right, so a little bit of confession time. I'm actually kind of lazy when it comes to hair and fur texture. So after I do this black, I'm going to take the gray and I'm just going to kind of go over some of these. I don't want too much of the white peering through. And going over the black and these being a water-based markers up against a wax-based pencil, it is a little bit messy. So I kind of clean off my brush every now and then. And you're going to see me using the color pencil also to kind of help fill in. But overall, I think he looks furry. And here is Mama Bear all done with the same technique. So, like I said, being a water-based marker over a wax pencil will be messy. So I'm going to let these dry. I'm going to do the little mushrooms here. And the mushrooms I am using, let's see, 920 and 1004. I want them to have kind of a glowing effect. Okay, so next you're going to see me playing around with this moon. I like it behind the trees, but you can still see one kind of inside of the moon, which doesn't look natural, obviously. So the challenge for me is trying to cover this up. I try erasing, I try going over it with color pencil, and then I finally break down and just get out the pastels and go over the top of it. So it looks like it's in front of the moon. All right, next I'm going to use a yellow and I'm just gonna fill in these little areas that I erased for the fireflies. So my thought process is to have some that look like they're kind of far away in the distance and then some that are brighter and that will be closer up. I'm also using the yellow just to add a little bit of a glow to the top here of her hair and the hat. And you'll notice a big fingerprint I left on the left side of the page. So the bear was still not dry, and yeah, my fingers are a mess, and my hand is also a mess. So you're going to see me trying to fix that little mistake too. Okay, and then to make these fireflies stand out a little bit brighter, the ones that are closest to us, and to cover up these black dots, I'm going to use the white Posca pen. And I forgot to add the highlight to the bear too, so I'm gonna just run a little bit of yellow up at the top of this bear. But yeah, so I'll use the Posca and kind of cover up those black circles, and it just makes the light a little bit brighter. All right, I said at the beginning of the video that I wanted each page to have this diamond glaze. So I've picked the mushrooms to give it that little glossy shine. Okay, so after looking at it off camera, I wanted to brighten up some of the fireflies here. So I used this Ohuhu paint pen, which is almost like a fluorescent yellow, and just did it on the ones that were up against an object. So like around the bears, and then there's one in the hair. And I think that made it stand out and look a little bit brighter. Okay, my final thoughts on this page. As I was making this video and looking back at the beginning of the page with nothing on it, I was amazed at how much depth the page has now with the trees and the ground line. The background did need some pre-planning, but actually doing the stencil part was probably the easiest part of the page. The most challenging part was the fur on the bears, which I'm still not sure how I feel about it. Maybe I'm just upset that I got fingerprints all over my page. But overall, I really like the color palette. The muted greens for the background and then the brighter greens for the kids' clothes against the black bears really stand out. The orange hair is a good complement to all the green too. It already looked whimsical before, but now with the forest and the fireflies floating around, it has a much more magical look. Not sure if it was the fixative, but coloring did have a different feel and took a little bit more effort to blend. My thoughts and prayers are with Hanna Karlzon. I know we are all thinking of you and your family at this time. I hope you all stay safe and healthy. See you next time.